probably the most common question I get asked when people learn that I'm a descendant of the Little Shell tribe. Before we got federal recognition, people would always ask why we didn't have a reservation. And I think both of those questions are really important. And I think to understand why I don't think that we would ever have a reservation is you would have to understand what a reservation is and how it's defined. And I think it's also important to understand that not everybody has the same perspective on how reservations should exist moving forward. And so the state of Montana and the tribal perspective on a reservation, and this is how we use it. And I've seen it described other ways, but it's pretty clearly defined in the Constitution what tribal sovereignty is. So, in the Constitution, tribal sovereignty is defined and recognized as the tribes existing before the United States. And when the United States was expanding into the West, one of the first treaties was the Horse Creek Treaty, the Treaty of Fort Laramie of tribes agreed to reserve land for themselves. And the land that exists today that the tribes have sovereignty of is the land that is left from those original treaties. There was much, much more land that was in those original treaties. Well, my who I descend from, Chief Little Shell, is a title. And so somebody gets that honor, and he becomes Chief Little Shell. And we have the French, Irish, and then we have our bison, and then the Eagle staff, and it is very representative of the Métis people. But we were a great empire, and somewhere along the way, some of my people had mixed in the fur traders that were up there and the trappers, and it was arranged marriages, but it was a great empire. And the Canadian government recognizes Métis people as an official race. And Chief Little Shell, one thing that my grandma told me and was very adamant about was that Chief Little Shell lobbied the United States government pretty heavily to officially recognize Métis as a race. And so he was kind of an activist, much like myself, the 10-cent treaty that was being signed, and whether Chief Little Shell of that band left Turtle Mountain or they were kicked out. He was looking at somebody funny one day, and they left. And that's in North Dakota. And they came to Montana, and there was some places that were really dire. And Hill 57 was one of them. Now, Heinz 57 sauce may or may not have come from Hill 57, so that's kind of one of our legacies. A lot of urban stories with the Little Shell up in Canada and Heber. And then we got statehood in the 80s, and then federal recognition just within the last in 18 to 19 into 18 to 19. So we missed out on the system. We would have been Turtle Mountain, and now, interestingly enough, a lot of our stuff is kind of ending up going through Turtle Mountain. So like our language revitalization with Ojibwe in Montana is going through Turtle Mountain. So why we didn't have a reservation originally was because we left Turtle Mountain or were kicked out, either way. And we have relatives at Rocky Boy as well. So then why wouldn't we have a reservation now is because that's not the system that we would have now. So we have land holdings. And then why would we want or need those land holdings? What would we do with that? Title holdings would give us activities in order to create scholarships for our youth system, because we missed out on the process of the Little Shell. So we'll have land holdings, and we do run a park at Fort Peck. Helps you understand a little bit more from the Little Shell tribal perspective. So thanks for listening to my story.